What is going on, Pokemon TCG enjoyers? Ciaran here with a very exciting video. If you kept up with the Baltimore regionals, our very first regional of the season, you know I did pretty well with my best finish at a major in the modern era. Really close to winning. It sucks to get that close but not to win, but it was a great run regardless. So today I thought I would give you guys my tournament report, flying high with Lugia, kind of go over my deck, why I picked Lugia, my lists, the choices, then go through all my matches in depth. At the end, kind of talk about where I think Lugia is going forward. If you want to hear even more about my run, go check out my podcast I do with my good friend Neil Saney, the Shift Gear podcast. It's always a good time. We release every week, Wednesdays at 12 p.m. So definitely go check that out. But diving into my report here, like I said, I'm going to go over the deck selection process, my actual report for the tournament, and then how I think Lugia is positioned in the Stellar Crown format. So I called this back to being a Lugia bot for our first section. So I think going into the tournament, I had two decks I was between. I was between Regidrago and I was between Lugia. So why did I not pick Regidrago? Regidrago to me on paper is probably like the best deck for getting points, for going deep. It can really beat everything. It's the most powerful deck. It has tons of options, but there's a couple of things I just didn't like about it. So it has a really shaky matchup into the aggressive decks. I really predicted decks like Raging Bolt, Roaring Moon, and Miraidon were going to be popular. I was thinking around 25% of the meta, and all three of those matchups kind of rely on your opponent eventually missing a turn of attacks. You have a lot of control over your ways to come back, but at the end of the day, a lot of it is out of your control. And not just like aggro, it's just like a lot of matchups are like slightly unfavored or like 50-50. And in a regionals, like I do trust myself as a player to outplay my opponent and turn those matchups slightly favored. But if you get deep in a tournament, the players get so good that it's really hard to do that. And for my second bullet point here, I put the mirror against the top players is very difficult, right? If you make a deep run with Regidrago, you're going to start running to players like Rowan, Ian Robb, Isaiah Bradner, just to name a few. And while I consider myself a strong player, those mirrors are probably just like straight up 50-50s because you're also playing as strong players. Where if I faced a more inexperienced Regidrago player, I think I'd feel more favored. But my goal is to go deep in tournaments, so that was a little bit of a concern for me. And like I also just have less experience with Regidrago. Like I've played it at Worlds, but I haven't played it like pretty much any other tournaments. A lot of my students play Regidrago, so I have played the deck a lot, but not really like in tournament settings. So I just didn't feel as comfortable with the deck. And the last point is like it just has a target on its back because it is the most popular deck. At Worlds, it was like 24-25%. I think everyone knew it was going to be the most popular deck again in Baltimore. So it's just like if you're going into the tournament, like you can't really have a bad Regidrago matchup, right? So it just felt like everyone was ready for the deck. They'd be well practiced against it. So I just didn't feel comfortable running it, even though I think it would have been like a great play. We saw two great players in Rowan and Ian make top 8. So I think Regidrago was still a good choice for the tournament. So let's go to why I did end up on Lugia. So on paper, its matchup spread is like insane. Like its only bad matchups are Iron Thorns and Miraidon. And I don't think people were gonna play Iron Thorns. One, just because everyone's been treating the deck like a joke, even though it won Worlds. And two, the deck's just like not that fun to play. It's very boring. If you're going to a regional championship, you've probably like paid money, you've put time into practicing. Like you probably want to play something more fun than Iron Thorns deck, right? I also just don't think the deck's that powerful. Also, I thought like decks like Ancient Box would probably keep it at the bottom tables. So I thought if I could just make it to top tables, like that deck just wouldn't exist. And I think my assessment was correct. The other bad matchup is Miraidon, but I don't think Miraidon was well positioned going into this tournament. So Charizard was seeing more hype, Ancient Box was seeing more hype, both bad matchups for Miraidon. So just thinking about it logically, right? If you're going to the tournament picking your deck, like why would you pick Miraidon? And I think we saw that reflected in its play rate was around 6%, and it also really struggled to convert to day 2 and make a deep run, even though there were so many Lugias in the top table. I mean, Jesse Parker, probably Miraidon's strongest soldier, he didn't even play Miraidon to this tournament, and he was telling me that he just didn't think the meta was right for it. So I think my assessment of the meta was correct, and I think that's one of the major reasons I had such a deep run in this tournament is because I got that meta prediction correct. And kind of building on the meta prediction, I also thought people aren't going to tech Enhanced Hammer and Temple of Sinnoh in their list. If you look at Worlds, most players in Regidrago, Charizard, they're running Temple, or at least Enhanced Hammer. So if I looked at Limitless like online tournaments, I looked at what some of the top players were like kind of posting about their list. A lot of people were taking that Temple Sinnoh out of their deck because Lugia did kind of underperform at the World Championship. Rahul already did get 9th, but other than that, it didn't do that well. So it just really felt like people were saying like, hey, let's take Temple out of our deck. And I think a lot of matchups that you're unfavored in, for example, like Charizard and Gardevoir, if they play Temple, you're actually like heavily favored if they don't play it, which is kind of crazy with the 1-card tech. So I just didn't think people were going to play these techs, and I was correct. I think only one opponent all weekend played a Special Energy tech, and it won them one of the games in our set, which I'll get to later. And my other point was Ancient Box was on the rise. It has been getting a lot of hype online, and that's one of Lugia's best matchups. So I just thought, like, hey, if that deck sees around 10% meta play, that's like just a free win for me, probably at least once or twice in the tournament. And finally, I think the most important point is I always preach play what you know. Even if the deck isn't the best deck, if you can play it to 90 to 100% effectiveness, it's a much better than playing the best deck if you can only play it to like 70% effectiveness. And if you followed my journey as a player the past few years, you know I am probably one of Lugia's, one of the biggest Lugia bots. I have my Limitless page here from a couple of years ago. You can see I had 7 day 2s with Lugia, 3 top cuts at majors. If you go with the Limitless for like players who have the most points with Lugia, I mean, tied for second. But no one can catch Reagan, the true Lugia bot. So anyways, that's why I ended up on Lugia. And this is the list I went to. Shout out the rushed picture I had to take on the airport seat because I only had like 10 minutes before my flight took off when I took this. So yeah, my approach for Lugia for this tournament was let's make the deck as consistent as I can. I think everyone knows that Lugia's reputation as a deck is a bit of a brick, it's a bit of a pile. But when the deck gets set up, it legitimately is the strongest deck in the format, in my opinion. Primal Turbo is like one of, if not the strongest ability ever printed on a Pokemon. You have Cinccino to kind of do this like unlimited damage cap. The Legacy Energy just like lets you manipulate prize trades. So my whole thing with this deck is let's get it working. I played a list at NAIC that had a bit more text, and I really felt that it was part of the reason I didn't do as well as I'd hoped. Because I was drawing stuff like a Jamming Tower, for example, instead of Mezagoza. So if you look here, like there's literally probably like no card here that's a tech, like nothing like a Jamming Tower, nothing like a bundle. I just devoted all these slots to maxing out consistency. So I played 4 Professor's Research, I played 4 Boss's Orders, I played Mezagoza as my stadium to give me like just another out to get in Pokemon. I played a Jacques, right, just to have more ways to find that Archeops. And I added the Squawkabilly EX to the list as well. In addition to the 2 Minion. So 3 support Pokemon to help me draw cards pretty much. Because I just thought if I'm playing the game, I'm giving myself a chance. I trust my ability as a player. And if I play all these tech cards, I don't even get to use them if I don't set up, right? So that's kind of like when you build decks, you kind of have to balance the techs and the consistency. So even if a tech is improving a matchup by a significant amount, if you're costing yourself consistency over like a 9-round tournament, or if you go deeper in the tournament, 13 rounds plus, it'll catch up with you in the long run normally. That's just kind of how statistics works, right? So I want to start off by talking about my Lugia line. So I played 3-3. A lot of players play 4-3. I ended up playing Nest Ball in this list, and I know a lot of people play Great Ball. I played Nest Ball because I put in Squawk, and because I played Nest Ball, I felt a little bit more comfortable playing 3 Lugia V. So you have, on turn 1, you have 9 guaranteed outs to Lugia V between the Lugias themselves, the Nest Balls, and the Ultra Balls. Then you have the Capturing Romas and the Goza, so you have 6 like 50-50 outs. I didn't really struggle to find Lugia turn 1 most of my rounds. The one thing that can be kind of sketchy is when you play against the Turbo decks, when they force you to go first, you have to find 2 Lugia going first, so that can be a little scary. But I honestly felt 3-3 was perfect for me the whole weekend. Once you Summoning Star, you pretty much don't want another Lugia. I ran the 2-2 Cinccino line, so I know we've seen some lists go down to 1-1. I just think 2-2 is just too important. If you play 1-1, your opponent can just chase down your lone Cinccino or just lone Cinccino. Then you don't really have that big damage threat besides the Weirder, which is kind of hard to utilize because it basically hogs all your energy, and you normally kind of use it for your last knockout. And there's just matchups like Charizard, for example, where it's like you really need that Cinccino to at least get 1 knockout to win the game. And the other thing I love about Cinccino is, like, I call this concept magnetism in Pokemon. It's like it needs to be knocked out or like dealt with like right away. So if you set up a Cinccino 5 energy, like your opponent can't really afford a turn of like knocking out Archeops, or else Cinccino's just gonna like run through their board. So whenever you set up a Cinccino with a bunch of energy, it's literally probably like one of, if not the strongest threat in like all of Pokemon. Then for the support Pokemon, I played Double Lumen, which I think is standard pretty much in Lugia, like pretty much since even like Silver Tempest. And then I ended up going with the Squawkabilly EX. I considered playing the Fez instead, or the Fez in addition to it. But the reason I went with Squawkabilly is, one, it lets you not have to play Carmine. I'm just not really a fan of Carmine. If you only play one copy, the odds of you opening it in your hand is around 1 in 9 games, which just isn't that good. If you run 4 copies of Carmine, your odds of opening your hand is around 4 in 9 games. Let's say you go first like 50% of the time, so then that's like you're getting to use it going first roughly like 25% of the time, and then like after that, researchers are strictly better. So I'm just personally not a fan of Carmine. If you run like 1 or 2 copies, you normally have to like Lumineon for it. Where I'm like, well, if that's the case, like why would you not just run Squawkabilly, because it draws 6, which is even better than Carmine, and then if you use it going second, you even get to play Supporter. A really cool combo with this deck that I pulled off a couple times too is you can just Jacq for 2 Archeops and squawk them away, which was an awesome play to do. And I only use Squawk maybe like 10 to 15% of my games, but the games I used it was like game saving where I would just like bricked without it. And another thing with Squawk is like a problem you have is actually when you go first, it's actually very tricky to get turn 2 double Archeops in the discard. Like so when you go second, you can play like a Research, you can read the wind. But when you go first, like you kind of have to have like Research as your supporter for the next turn and hopefully some Archeops in hand, or you have to like draw Ultra Ball plus 2 chops, which is very difficult. So if you Squawkabilly turn 1, it's basically like playing that supporter. It just makes it much easier to get that turn 2 Summoning Star for 2 Archeops. Then finally moving on to my like one of attackers, I have the Weirdeer, the Blood Moon, the Iron Hands. I think the Blood Moon and the Iron Hands is pretty much standard in every Lugia list. And then I have finally the Weirdeer. Weirdeer's just awesome. Like it just lets you finish games when the Cinccino goes down. Lets you take knockouts out of nowhere. So I also played 17 Energy, which I'll get to, mainly because I was playing this Weirdeer. Then yeah, like my supporter lineup I think was pretty safe, pretty standard. The 4 Research, I just want to play the game. 4 Boss, I think Boss is a fantastic card. A lot of games, especially like matchups like Regidrago, you want to go like Gust. 2 Iono, I would love to play more Iono actually, just to have that disruption option, but normally you play from ahead with Lugia, so I don't think it's like necessary. And then Jacq was like actually like my 60th card. I had Bundle on the list before, and then I decided like, you know what, let's full commit to consistency, and I'm really happy that I did, because Jacq is a card where it feels very mediocre on paper, but just having that option to just grab double Archeops, even if you have Lumineon for it, is really nice, and I used it really effectively this weekend. Other than that, yeah, my items are just ball cards, and then this goes to my stadium. And yeah, for the energies, I went with 17. Again, just for consistency reasons, and just to make sure Weirder has enough energy to be used effectively. So mainly the other cards I considered were like Bundle. Like I said, Bundle's really good against decks that like try and put a 1 prizer on the active. Like Regidrago might put Cleffa, for example, and you can kind of force a 2 prizer up. Or like kind of if they have like a 1 prizer with a lot of HP against like Charizard, for example, like they put Radzard, like you can force something small to like Iron Hands, or you can like Cinccino. And then Fez is like I guess the other card I considered, but my problem with Fez is like your opponent can kind of play around it. So if you're playing this aggro decks, like they normally don't disrupt you, and like you can just put Gift on your 2 prizers because they need to knock out the 2 prizers. So Gift is kind of your draw engine in those matchups. The matchups for Fez are really good are the ones that like you're gonna get Iono or Roxanne, so stuff like Charizard, stuff like Regidrago, stuff like Gardevoir. But those decks can kind of just go like counter catcher Iono, knock out Fez. The counter to that is you can put a Gift energy on the Fez, but sometimes like in those matchups, like you're committing your energy so much like Cinccino or something, you don't have time to do that. So I really like Fez. I think if I could find space somehow, I'd find space for Fez. But honestly, I really feel like the 60 I picked for this tournament were like the optimal 60 cards. I was really happy with this list. Alright, so moving into the tournament report, how hot did I run to make it that deep with Lugia? So I ran pretty well overall. I think I played really well as really good Pokemon as well. So I'll kind of go through all my rounds and call it anything interesting. So just to show you at a high level the types of decks I played against, I pretty much played them against a lot of different decks. The crazy thing to me is over 16 rounds, I hit 0 Regidrago, even though it was the most popular deck both days, which it kind of goes to show you, right? Like you can prepare, like know what the best deck is, expect to hit something, and just hit a bunch of random stuff. I mean, I felt comfortable in the Regidrago matchup, especially since a lot of players weren't playing Sinnoh. But it was just funny that I dodged it. But if you look here, I hit a lot of good matchups instead, which we'll go through. So to start out the tournament, I played against Christian from the US, playing Gardevoir. He didn't play Sinnoh or Enhanced, so I felt fairly favored in the matchup. Game 1 was pretty close. I think he had an opportunity to like play Iono plus disrupt me and like take out my only Cinccino. But he had left a Gardevoir in the active, which let me like evolve to my second one. I think I had game either way because I drew boss off his like Iono to 2. And I think like a capturing him or something. And in the second game, like he just prized 2 Ultra Balls. And so when he went to go Arvin, he couldn't get a Gardevoir, so he was just too slow to set up. Kind of just let me run over him. So it's always good to like just start tournaments with a win. You know, the nerves are gone. You're starting off on a high note. My next round was against Raging Bolt. I honestly really don't have a lot to say. I can't remember much about this match. I just know I set up both games and I won. So Raging Bolt as a matchup is pretty good. It's literally just, do you set up or not? And if you do set up, you pretty much just win because they don't have a way to deal with your legacy energy unless they play Enhanced or Sinnoh, which Anthony did not. And then round 3, I faced another Raging Bolt. Game 1 was just like really easy Lugia game, set up and won. Game 2 was kind of awkward because, like, I'm not exaggerating, I flipped like 5 or 6 tails in a row, and I just like on Aroma, on Mezagoza, and I just like could not set up Cinccino to try and like disrupt his prize trade. And I think I prized Legacy this game, or he like got rid of it earlier, so I had to attack like Blood Moon without Legacy at the end of the game with an Iono, and I just had to like pray he couldn't set up a last Raging Bolt, and luckily he didn't. He also forgot to use my Mezagoza to find his Fez, but yeah, I escaped game 2 basically just by getting lucky, I guess. I mean, I also got unlucky to flip so many tails, but anyways, won round 3. Round 4, I played against Santiago. He was playing Palkia Dusknoir with the Greninja EX, which is it's a really cool deck. When I sat across from it, like I've never played against it, right? So I actually didn't really know what to expect. So when he mulliganed, I saw like Irida, Water, Rare Candy. So I'm like, oh, I'm playing against Chen Pao, and then like he flipped over the Duskulls, and I knew what was up because I've heard about this deck before. So the first game, like I kind of just like got set up really quickly, and he kind of struggled to get set up. But the second game, I feel like I really didn't play my best, and I think partially because I was so unfamiliar with the deck. So it kind of goes to that concept: if you play something spicy, like a lot of people just won't know what to do against you. So yeah, he went first, and he got like 2 Duskulls down, and I only benched 1 Lugia because he didn't get Palkia down. And he almost got like turn 2 double Dusknoir on my lone Lugia. He had like a restart with Mew EX for 2. If he would have hit Rare Candy, he could have blown up my only Lugia, and I would have had a lot of trouble in that game. Also, at the end of the game, I played a boss, and I could have taken out his only Froakie, and instead of taking out like a 2-prizer, because it completely slipped my mind that like Greninja EX is a fighting type, because I didn't see it in game 1. And he could have knocked out like my Blood Moon with the first attack. Then Iono me, and I didn't have a gift on it. So I kind of left myself open to that play. Luckily, he didn't draw Iono, so then I just got to like Lumineon for boss my following turn. But that was definitely like bad on my part not to remember, because I saw the Froakie was water, and I completely forgot that Greninja was fighting. But yeah, I escaped that round with a win. Alright, round 5, I played a Mirror. Honestly, there's nothing exciting to say. Like, he did not get turn 2 Summoning Star either game. I went first the first game too, and I got turn 2 double Archeops. Lugia Mirror is really lame. Pretty much whoever just draws better, and luckily it was me in this round. All right, round 6, I played against Snorlax. It was funny when we sat down at the table. My opponent said it was gonna be a quick game because he saw what I was playing. So I nervously asked him if he's playing Iron Thorns, and he said no. So then I felt pretty confident when he flipped over the Snorlax with a Mimikyu or something. So game 1, he actually hit some Pokemon off of a Flute. And he had like a 1-turn window where if he like hit another Flute, he could have like bench locked me from playing Minccino down and then tried to cornerstone me. But I had a Lumineon on my bench, so I could have just Aqua returned it at some point. And I'm pretty sure he was out of Flute since they played unless he played 4, which honestly he actually might have. So then game 2, like I literally just got turn 2 like Archeops plus a bench Minccino, so he literally just scooped it up as soon as that happened. Just because block really can't win without Lugia techs. And honestly, if you played Snorlax, I honestly thought it was correct not to play Lugia techs. You really have to devote like 3 or 4 temples plus Giacomo, which is like a big deck space commitment when you could just commit that space to beating your better matchups instead. If you want to do well at a tournament, you kind of just have to concede some matchups aren't going to be good, and just make sure your deck is consistent and able to beat the matchups you are supposed to beat. All right, round 7, I got paired against Brent. Thompson from Australia. I think most of you know Brent. He's ranked #1 in the world last year. So it's funny, I told my friends, like, I'm like, oh, we're definitely going to be the stream match. And when I went to the table, I saw that piece of paper that says here on stream. It was actually a really, really great set. It's on YouTube. I'm actually going to VOD review it. So if you're watching this video probably like a couple days after it came out, that might already be out. So go check that out. But yeah, I love playing against players like Brent because it really feels like I'm playing chess. Like I know my opponent's going to play pretty much perfectly. And I have to kind of match that if I want to win. So the first game was, it was really close. I didn't get turn 2 Summoning Star, but so like he got some time to set up. But by the time I set up, like I was starting the prize race, I was ahead in it. I went to odd prizes at first, so he couldn't really ever Dust Nor because that would put me back to even. The one annoying thing about this game is I drew Legacy Energy turn 1, and I had the Squawking Seas. So I had to commit to a Lugia, so I couldn't Iron Hands. I had the option, like I flipped Tails on Aroma. I could have maybe grabbed Iron Hands and put the Legacy, but I just felt like prioritizing getting Lugia. So looking back, that might have been something different I could have done. And at the very end of the game, I set it up so that my deck was only 2 cards, Boss and Research. He had a damaged Charizard, and his bench was like Charmander, Dusclops, and Pidgeot, I think. So I was like, okay, like if I get Iono to 1, if he doesn't evolve his Charizard, just attacks with his other one, I'm guaranteed to draw Research, and I'll guarantee to draw Ursaluna for game. If he evolves his bench Charizard EX, then I have Boss on top of my deck. He has a Dusclops in play. I can Boss it and knock it out with Archeops. So I'm like, the only way I don't win is if he goes like Rare Candy, Charizard, Iono, evolve that Dusclops. And of course he had that, so I just couldn't win because I prized my last gift, so I couldn't gift. I can't remember what Pokemon it was. I think it was Lugia in the active. So I kind of lost that one. Game 2, I had a pretty good setup. I just kind of win. He Iono me to 1 at one point, like went around gift, and like I just ripped Research because I'm him. And then game 3, a really similar scenario came up where I got Iono to 1 and I drew Research again. But I actually messed up here, so I needed to just draw Chinchino to win because I had 2 energy on my rat already. So I actually Primal Turboed ahead of time to pull energy out of my deck, so I pulled 4 cards out, but I had a 7-card hand before I got Iono'd. So the correct thing would have been to Research first because my deck, the cards on the bottom aren't random and they weren't Chinchino outs. So I would have had a higher odd to get Chinchino. So I did the Primal Turbos first, so I probably took my odds from like 90% to hit to like 80% to hit. And then of course I immediately got punished and I had like a crazy whiff where like honestly I felt like I was going to win and then bam, like just missed it. So I'm not going to lie, that was a pretty tilting way to lose because it felt like I was so favored in that spot. But I think the really great lesson to take away from that is in the moment I thought that I got really unlucky and I did get unlucky, but I could have played better, right? So like a lot of games, maybe when you say to yourself like, oh, like I got so unlucky, I lost because of this, like maybe like reflecting like, okay, was there anything I could have done better to win that game? So yeah, my first loss, before this, I was 12-0 in individual games. Like I was running really hot, playing really well for the most part. So finally getting my first loss, but I felt okay. I had 2 more rounds to get 1 win, and I got paired against another Charizard in round 8 against Tanner Hurley. I think he was a really strong player in the senior division. I think he told me he took a break for a bit and was coming back. So yeah, we had a pretty decent set. The first game, I kind of just like played it slow, so I'm like read the wins. He actually ended up taking the prize lead himself by playing like a Prime Catcher on my Luminion. But that was fine for me. I just used Chinchino to flip the prize trade. I just didn't bench any more 2 prizers besides the Lugia VSTAR I already had in play. He didn't play Dust Nor either, so I didn't have to worry about any tricky plays. Second game, I just completely bricked, got some Lugia hands. So I scooped it up, went to game 3. It was kind of close. He like couldn't set up Pidgeot, but he had Bibarel as his like draw engine. I set up like a massive Weirdeer like to knock him out. So like basically like I had 1 Archeops left, so if he knocked it out, I could just attach, knock out the Weirdeer for my last prize. So he had the Iono me and then like and get Counter Catcher on some. I can't remember what else he had to get Counter Catcher on, but he whiffed and I drew Boss off Iono anyways, so it didn't end up mattering. So yeah, I went 7-1 at this point. I was locked in day 2, which feels great. but I'm not here to make day 2. I'm here to win tournaments. So going into round 9, I'm like, all right, let's go in with that 8-1 record. So I'm playing against Joseph Holland. He's actually from the UK, but he lives in Montreal, actually, so he's a temporary Canadian. So I'm basically going to say I was playing against a Canadian. So our match was like pretty uneventful. Like the first game, I just like had Lugia in hands, I bricked. The second game was just completely normal. I set up and I won. Game 3, like I had a really rough start, and I had to have like a bunch of like 2 prize liabilities on my bench, cause he played Dusclops, and I could not get the Summoning Star like off on the first couple turns, so I had to bench 2 Lugias, and I also had to bench like a Luminion along the way. So he had the prize map there for him. But he played like a collapse stadium at one point and like let me discard my Lugia V, my second one. So I'm like, oh, like now I'm actually back in control of the prize trade. And then I had one turn where I'm like, okay, I like researched because I'm like, I just need to draw cards. And then on the following turn, all I really needed was either an energy to knock out his Charizard EX because I had a Cinccino, a boss to knock out his Pidgeot EX, or just like a draw supporter like Research or Iono. So I could just draw my last energy because I only had one Archeops in play because I think he knocked out my other one. I just like literally researched the turn prior and I literally drew the most like bricked hand I've ever got. Like literally none of the cards were playable. And I couldn't bench a Luminion because then I just like lose the boss, which I had to bench Luminion because I didn't have another option. Then he just gusted it and I lost. I took out his Pidgeot, but I think he just had it. So it was a really frustrating one to lose, but I mean, like I've been running so hot the rest of the day where I'm like, you know what, like that just kind of evened it out. So going into day 2, I was 7-2, so I knew I would need to go 4-0 to make the cut. I mean, it's not something I haven't done before, so I just felt like, you know what, as long as I get the right matchups, like I think it's very doable. So it was really nice round 10, where I started Luminion, which like I wasn't feeling good, but then my opponent flipped over Baby Roaring Moon, and I kind of felt a little bit better. I feel really favored into Ancient Box, and I feel favored into the Aggro Moon. And once my opponent benched some more like Ancient Pokemon, I knew what I was up against. So I had a really slow start. I think I got like turn 3 Summoning Star, turn 4 Summoning Star, but my opponent missed the attack for like his first like 3 turns too. And this matchup is just like Roaring Moon just doesn't do enough damage at the start to knock out the Lugia VSTAR. So you just trade so well. You have Iron Hands to take 2 on their Greninja. Then you have Cinccino just to trade 1 for 1. So if both decks set up, Lugia is just going to always win the prize trade. So eventually when we both set up, I mean, I just won because my deck's just like better in this matchup. Game 2, I also missed turn 2 Summoning Star in this game, but he missed turn 2 attack in this game again. So then I just like set up and I won this one. So that was a nice, easy start to the day, which felt good. All right, round 11, I played against a mirror match. Game 1 was interesting because like I got turn 2 Summoning Star, and I had before I researched I only had 1 Chops in my discard, and I had like Iron Hands Jet, and I was like debating doing it, but I didn't want to do it because if I whiffed I would have been in a really bad spot, and like if I hit turn 2 Chops, so it would have been better. And then he had actually like an insane setup where he was able to like get his Cinccino going on his second turn. I think he got a boss. So there was a window for him to 2-2-2, but eventually he missed boss for 1 turn. There's like a really interesting turn where his hand was around like it was around I think 8 or 9 cards, and I had Iono, and I could have Iono'd him to 3 because I'm like, yeah, I need him to whiff boss either next turn or the turn after. But on the previous turn he used Luminion for boss. So to me that's like screaming that he doesn't have boss in his hand, because like why would you do that? So I actually thought if I Iono'd him to 3, I'm actually probably increasing his odds of getting boss, right? So I'm like, I don't really care what else you have in your hand. Like, you can do whatever, because I was attacking the Cinccino. So I'm like, if you just don't have boss, like, I'm going to win. So, yeah, I made the read to not Iono him, and it really paid off. He just didn't have boss on that one specific turn, and then just let me take the lead again in the prize trade, and I won that game. The second game, he went first. He gets the setup he needs. Kind of just runs over me. Actually, it was actually close now. He only got solo chops, and like if I could have drawn boss, because I read the win turn 1, I actually could have knocked it out and I would have won, but I just didn't have it. So then he got to stabilize it and kind of won from there. And the third game, I went first, got double Archeops turn 2, luckily, and then I just went 2-2-2 and won from there. So again, feels kind of lucky to win a Lugia mirror, just because I went first in game 1 and 3, but I think I had a cool play in game 1 that needed a little bit of skill in the matchup. So. All right, round 12, face the Canadian. Alex, his first year in Masters, so great result for Alex in his very first Masters tournament. So turn 1, he makes me go first. I only got 1 Lugia down, so this is really scary against the aggro decks because they all play like bundle, catcher, prime catcher. And he just whiffed the turn 1 Raging Bolt attack, which is just like massive for me. And then I think I whiffed the turn 2 Lugia, but I was able to like bench another one so that I could just stabilize my board. So eventually, in this matchup, you can only bench 3 2-prizers because you can legacy one of them and then flip the prize trade. So I was able to do that luckily. Take that one. The second game, I just couldn't set up. I had to put too many liabilities into play. The third game, I felt much more comfortable since I get to go second. You go second with Lugia into all the aggro decks, because if you go first, they're going to attack anyways. So you'd rather just like have the option to play a supporter and read the wind, just to make sure your second turn is super strong. You get the double Archeops, and you can like keep pace with them. There was like one thing, like I could have like benched an Ursaluna before I was going to get Iono'd with a legacy. But I for whatever reason, I respected like Sinnoh and like what else? What other card am I thinking of? Sinnoh and Enhanced too much. When it should have been obvious to me that he didn't play them by like third game. I mean, it was still fine because like I had a gift on my Chinchinos, so like whatever he knocked out, he had to like activate it for me, and I just won with like a Ursaluna I think at the end. But yeah, could have been a little bit more clean on my end. All right, then I get to the winning in. I see him playing with my friend Rafal. He's actually been on my podcast before, and Rafal was talking to me before the tournament on Discord about Roaring Moon, because I wrote an article about it for Poke Beach, and he loves Roaring Moon. So I talked to him on day 1 too, and he basically told me what he was playing, and I knew his list because he had sent it to me ahead of time. So yeah, I feel fine with this matchup. I won the flip, so I got to go second. But I started with like just Iron Hands, and my hand like really sucked. It had a Research and a Mist, so I put a Mist on my Iron Hand and researched. I did not draw any Lugia. I drew a Mezagoza and no more Lugia outs and a Luminion. But I put a Mist on my Iron Hands because I knew Rafal didn't play Temple or Enhanced. And it's actually kind of funny, Roaring Moon can't hit more than 220. They need Frenzied Gouging. So I knew I bought myself a turn. My following turn, I got the double Lugias down. But the problem was, on the turn after that, I had to bench Luminion again to get set up. And I had no way of stopping him from going for a 2/2/2 prize map. He also flipped 3 heads on catcher in this game. There wasn't really much I could do. So by the time I got Chinchino going, he just went around it. Game 2 was pretty normal. I just set up and I won. Game 3, I had a really good opening hand. I just started 2 Lugias like raw, I think. But I prized Legacy, so I actually couldn't bench more than 2. So it was pretty lucky that that happened. I had to take a weird prize map because I had to take a 1 prize knockout at some point to go to 3 because I didn't have boss. And then I almost threw the game because I didn't have Legacy, so he was at 2. And I went to go knock out his Roaring Moon to go down to 1, and then I almost forgot that Pekkarunt will do 300 and he could boss my Lugia for game. And I kind of like started to attack, and I'm like, oh wait, can I boss instead to him? And he's like, yeah, it's fine. So shout out Rafal for that. He definitely could have called the judge and been like, yeah, I think Ciaran was attacking, so you have to go through with it. So I bossed the Greninja instead to go to 2, so then the Pekkarunt only does 240. And then on the following turn, I just knocked out. I can't remember what I knocked out. I think I just bossed something else for game with Lugia. So at this point, I'm 11-2. I was looking at Poke data, and it's like, oh, my resistance was horrible. So I'm like, oh, I'm definitely in an asymmetrical cut match. Ends up that Poke data doesn't have the resistance calculations properly because I think Pokemon changed how it works now with the new system. So I got 6th seed by like 0.4%. And I was the first person that got to dodge the asymmetrical cut, which was huge for me. Huge sigh of relief. And even better, I got paired against probably my best matchup in top 8. I got paired against the Ogerpon Noivern deck. So honestly, I had no idea what this deck was. And I remember G-Shen came up to me and he's like, oh, that matchup's like free. And I'm like, yeah, like, but what if they knock out my like Chinchinos and stuff? And I'm like, I found out like they only play like 1 boss and 1 counter catcher. So I just knew going into the game, I'm like, okay, like if I can just get Chinchinos, like wait to knock stuff out until I'm knocking out Chinchino, I should be fine. Also to save my Lugia Vs in this matchup and my Iron Hands because they can attack the Ogerpon. So he wins the flip and he chooses to go second because their deck plays Turbo Energize and just to set up better with like Arven. And he mulligans 3 times. So he actually gives me a lot to work with in my opening hand. So on my second turn, if I flip heads on Aroma, I just get double chops turn 2 and I win. I flip tails, but I was able to go like single chops, 3 energies on a Chinchino, and I had boss on his only cornerstone, his cornerstone with the energy. And this deck has no way to attack without having an energy on the Ogerpon ahead of time. So then I just like swept him like pretty fast, because then he just put another cornerstone. I think I gusted it again, or he like just only had the other one. So I won game 1 really fast, which felt great. Game 2, I got turn 2 Cinccino again. But this time he had his other Ogre Pawn ready to take it out. So what I had to do from this position was, I don't want to bench my second Minccino immediately, because then he can just Arvin for counter catcher and take it out. And then it's actually pretty hard for me to get through his cornerstone, because he played the rock plate, or whatever it's called, where, like, it takes 30 less damage. So Lugia V had to 3-shot it. So what I did is I just kept poking his cornerstone with Lugia. He played Penny at one point, so I knew he had all his energies in hand, so I honored them away. And then I waited for him to take a knockout on my Lugia, so he was winning the prize trade. And then I'm like, okay, now it's safe to bench Minccino, since he can't counter catch anymore. He just has to raw draw boss. And I combined my Minccino bench with an Iono to 3 for him. So he would basically just have to get really lucky if he draws 1 boss to take out my Minccino. Otherwise, I just evolve, take out his only attacking Ogre Pawn, and kind of just win from there. And that's basically what happened. So the matchup felt like really easy for me. I probably won in like 15 minutes. And they started us at the same time as the asymmetrical cut matches. So I had to wait for the asymmetrical match to go, and then the other top 8 match to go, and then I got to play top 4. It ended up being 2.5 hours before I got to play, so it's almost like in football when they ice the kicker. It's kind of what it felt like for me. But finally, I got to play top 4 against Emmett. There should be a Roaring Moon, not a cornerstone on the board. So yeah, Emmett was a really cool guy. I talked to him before the match. It was one of the closest sets I think I've ever played in my life. Game 1, like, I thought I had it locked. Like, I was just cruising. Like, I was like, okay, I got the perfect setup. I had like the bear with a mist. Like, once he goes down to 2, like, he can't do anything to me. But he like kept playing his turnout. I'm like, what card is he like? What is he looking for? Because I had the game, and eventually he like draws his whole deck, and he has Enhanced Hammer. So yeah, my heart sank, because I didn't know he played Enhanced Hammer. I probably should have just asked people like who played against him, or my friends, and like they probably would have let me know. I don't think it would have changed anything in this specific game. But yeah, that made the matchup way harder, and like he stole a game from like under my nose pretty much. So game 2, I had some awkward hands. I knew to put like double mist on Lugia. I had to take a 1 prize knockout at one point because I didn't have boss. And then I got to this really interesting board state where I had a Lugia with 4 energy. I had an Archeops on the bench. He was at 3. I was at 3 prizes. He was at 2 prizes, and he just attacked me with a Roaring Moon. It was poison, had 10. So if I knock it out, he can just knock me out with Pekka. If I put Legacy on my Lugia, he still has his Enhanced Hammer. So I did this play where I put a double turbo on my Lugia to on purpose not knock out his Roaring Moon, so that I gave myself like another turn to draw boss's orders, to boss up his Greninja so I could go to 2. Or if he didn't knock out my Archeops, I could Iron Hands. But I knew he had boss in his hand because he Pokegear the turn before. So on his turn, this is where I thought my run was over. Because if he just bosses my Archeops, I didn't have boss in my hand, I would have had to top deck it. But he just ended up Calamity Storming my Lugia, because I guess he just wanted to like win over 2 turns. I think it slipped his mind that I could Iron Hands. Luckily, he did that. I got to Iron Hands, take 3 prizes, like escape by the skin of my teeth. Some people were telling me there's a play where I could like Lumineon for boss and then Aqua returned. But it wouldn't have worked because I had Legacy in my hand, so I would have had to put all the energies on Archeops or on Lumineon, retreat my Lugia, it has 2, but then Emmett could have just gone boss, Archeops, Enhanced Lugia, and then I had no way to attack. So yeah, I had to play to my outs. It was a pretty cool play, and it ended up working out for me. And then game 3 was really close again. So I had a really nice opening hand where I had like Nest Ball, Ultra Ball, Double Chops. And if you watch, it was like, the commenters are a bit confused, like I didn't slam my Ultra Ball, Double Chops. It's because I wasn't sure what Emmett was going to do. So in the game, I Ultra Balled and just committed to grabbing Lugia VSTAR because I was scared of getting judged and just having a bad setup. But like if he would have Frenzied Gouging, which he ended up doing in the game, I could have like Aqua returned. So I could have Ultra Balled for Lumineon for research and then Aqua returned for the knockout. Like so that I have cards to play with. But I like decided just to play it safe around judge, and I Ultra Balled for like the VSTAR. So I was basically committing to not having draw and having to rely on the gift to get me to the win. And then from there, I also had a boss in my hand, so I'm like, all right, like if he Calamity Storms one of my bench Lugias, the one without energy, I can just go evolve, Iron Hands, boss, amp you very much for 2 prizes. And then I could like also like if he wants to knock out Iron Hands, he has to Frenzied Gouging, and then it'll force him like just give me 2 prizes again. And I prized 2 boss, so I knew I'd probably draw them by then to finish the game. So instead he just frenzy gougings my Iron Hands, and then I put up a Lugia and I only put 1 mist on it because my thought process was, well, if he enhanced hammers the mist and frenzied, I just get a knockout again. But looking back, I could have put 2 mist on my Lugia. That way, if I knock him out, I had boss, and then like it forces him to eventually trigger a gift. But I still won this game because eventually, like he does do the mists frenzied gouging thing, but eventually I just put gift energies on all my Pokemon. And just once one of them finally got knocked out, I just had to go Blood Moon boss to win the game. But it was really close. Like you can see at the end if you go watch the VOD, like I'm just like taking a deep breath after it. It just felt really good to escape that match. And yeah, going to finals, like I was so locked in. I'm like, I wanted to win so badly. Like I've made top cuts so many times at these big tournaments. This is my 2nd time in the finals for regional. My last time in the finals was like almost 10 years ago, 2016 Toronto regionals. So I've gotten 2nd at regionals, 2nd at nationals. I've gotten top 4 at NIC, top 8 at NIC, another top 4 at regionals, top 8 at regionals. It's like I've been so close so many times without that like one big win. So going into the finals, I actually felt favored because Henry didn't play any energy disruption. But it just didn't go my way in the end. Game 1, I started Lumineon going 2nd, and he just had a raw secret box, turn 2 candy knockout. The game actually was like really, I had a huge opportunity to win because he didn't evolve his other Ralts. If I would have knocked out his Gardevoir, I had Iono in my hand too. I think I would have just like won the game. And I just needed 3 DTE from my deck to pull it off because I had Weirdeer and Jet in my hand, and I prized 2 DTE. So I couldn't Weirdeer. And then we get to the late part of the game, and I almost had another chance where if he didn't draw his like only 1 boss, I could have Weirdeer knocked out his Gardevoir with boss for game. And of course he drew boss after he did his like concealed cards and Curlius. So that was super frustrating, where it felt like I had such a bad start and I still had chances to win. Just Henry got pretty much everything he needed. Game 2, I prized Legacy Energy. I whiffed turn 2 double chops. He got turn 2 Screamtail, which is like insane for his deck. Just kind of ran me over. So I mean, Henry's like a fantastic guy. Like I was super happy for him to win. It was still a lot of fun, and I was really proud of my play that weekend, my accomplishment. And I think it stung less knowing that I couldn't have really done anything in the finals. The cards just didn't come my way. I think it would have hurt more if I didn't play my potential, or I just kind of like threw the finals. But really, it was just Lugia hands finally caught up to me at the end there, and Henry it was his day, it was his tournament. So it was a fantastic run. You know, I just had so much support from all my friends and family, like all my students and kids I coach. Even the crowd there, a lot of people who I didn't even know were just always so supportive and cheering for me there. So it was a really great run. Something I'll cherish for a while here, but I'm still hungry for that big win. So just to finish off here, I thought I'd talk about Lugia going forward. So that was our last tournament in the Shroud of Fable format. So going forward, we do have Stellar Crown. So I just want to talk about, is Lugia still a good deck going forward? So I kind of pulled some Japan results. This is from OmniPoke on Twitter. I follow him at OmniJoe. He always does a really good job like aggregating all the Japanese results. So yeah, the thing you can see is, I just want to point out, is like Lugia is still doing really well in Japan. Obviously take Japanese results with a grain of salt. It's a different player base, different styles from North America, or just the West in general. But I think this kind of makes sense to me. Like Lugia, I think in this format was kind of like a tier 2 deck, and it kind of seems like it's going to stay that way. One thing that I think is good for Lugia is that it seems like Dragapult's picking up a lot of play, and that's a really solid matchup for Lugia, as is Raging Bolt. But the one problem for Lugia is Special Energy Hate going to be played? If decks are playing Enhanced Hammer or Sinnoh, your matchups become much worse. And I do feel like Lugia is going to be respected again. I think most decks are going to put that Sinnoh or that Enhanced back in the deck. So to me, I think Baltimore was kind of lightning in a bottle for Lugia, where it was just the perfect metagame for it, and people just weren't respecting it. But I think going forward, I think it'll be a little more hostile for Lugia. Like I can assume Charizard decks might fit it in. If Raging Bolt plays an Enhanced, I think the matchup's slightly unfavored. That's kind of my thoughts there, but Lugia is still going to be strong, right? And if you can find those metagames where people are kind of sleeping and they're not playing those techs, then you're going to go on some really deep runs with the deck. The other thing too is, I haven't played enough games to like definitively say this, but I think Briar is actually pretty annoying for Lugia against Charizard. You know, Charizard does play Dusknoir, so it's not that hard for them to just go down to make you go to 2 prizes. or like for them just like blow up Chino plus Briar, knock out like a 2-prizer and win the game. So not every list from Japan is playing Briar from what I've been seeing, but I do think that's another now tool that Charizard has to fight back against Lugia. So to me, Lugia's success in the next format is probably going to be based on how good it is into Charizard. So maybe a build to explore for Lugia is the one that like Rahul plays, the one with the Raikou and the Lightning Energy. And the reason that's better against Charizard is because Raikou can take out the Pidgeot fairly easily. And then you still have Iron Hands, you know, if you go first, they'll like really accelerate the prize trade by taking those 2 prize knockouts right away. So I think Lugia is still super strong going forward. It'll definitely be a deck in my arsenal. But hopefully it stays as a top tier deck and I can have some more success with it. But yeah, my next tournament's not going to be until LAIC. But I'm excited to see how like Dortmund goes, or not Dortmund, Lille goes, and Louisville. That'll hopefully give us some more clear answers about where our format is heading. Because it does seem like our new format is not changing things too much. I said, look, Stellar Crown's the name of the set. I have the boxes I won on my desk here. So yeah. So that's going to do it for today. Thanks everyone for sticking around and watching. I really appreciate your support. If you want to follow me, you can follow me on Twitter. It's at Ciaran_TCG. Go check out my podcast at Shift Gear Podcast on YouTube. We're also on Apple and Spotify, and I think some other platforms. It's a really fun podcast. We do it every week, so if you want weekly content from me, check it out there. I know I haven't been super consistent on my YouTube channel here, but I have a lot more time now, and I want to make some more competitive content now that the new season started. So please let me know in the comments below what type of content you want to see. I definitely think my niche and like my specialty is more that competitive stuff. I've done lots of deck guides in the past, but looking for ideas for more creative ways I can help you guys learn and get better. Yeah, that's all I have for today. I appreciate it if you stuck around till the end. Please consider subscribing and liking if you want to see more content. But other than that, best of luck in all of your games.